with Joan, the place for all the fun. Reading with Joan.
Hi everyone, welcome to Reading with Joan. My name is Big J, and we're reading The Jungle Doctor and Slippery Places by Paul White. We're reading the last chapter. Wow. Okay, the last chapter is called Out of the Swamp. Boga had arrived in the hospital Land Rover. Tembo was filling the radiator. My memory is filled with last night, he said. Silence and darkness and whispering, and loud noises, explosion, and a sky full of flame, sparks, and smoke. It will look different in daylight, said Dottie. Let's go and see. Many other people were walking down Peely's Road, looking at the 5-kilometer stretch of grey and black ash that the day before had been matted reeds and undergrowth and thorn bush. The morning air was heavy with smoke. The Land Rover turned in at the egg-shaped boulder, stopping on the first wide stretch of granite. Ahead of them were two men looking over the brown water. One was exceptionally tall, the other, their glitter and tatters, they recognized at once. Dr. Matama hurried forward, calling, "Can you guess who it is?" "Jacobo, it's good to see you." He stretched out his hand. Jacobo hesitated, and then their hand gripped. The others joined them, obviously delighted to see Jacobo. Boga chuckled. "Isn't it Mfupi, the man with the largest bed and the loudest cough in the hospital?" There was a strange silence. There was no sound of words, no sound of noise, no sound of wind. They walked quite a way towards the cooking pot before Baruti said, "Jacobo, we heard that you made a lot of money." Jacobo pushed the stone around with his bare toes. "I lost it all. I've lost everything." "Not everything," said Dr. Dottie. Jacobo looked at them with a twisted smile. In his hard voice, he said, "Truly, I have traveled the ways of small wisdom." He looked over the drab, scorched ridge of the swamp. "Everything is gone." The young doctor nodded. "But everything had to go to save the harvest." Jacobo's head jerked up. "That harvest," went on Dottie, pointing his chin towards the green of millet and maize gardens. He looked squarely at Jacobo. "And the one you can produce for God." "It's too late," murmured Jacobo. "Don't you understand? I've broken commandment after commandment. I've gone too far. Too far!" "That's strange," said Dottie. "Has your memory lost its strength?" Jacobo threw a pebble into the water. "My memory has plagued me. Verses from the Bible forced their way into my mind. It has been as though a voice has spoken day after day. I've closed my ears to it and tried to keep from taking notice. But at night and in my dreams, I could not escape it." A soft chuckle came from Baruti. "Our prayers have kept your conscience alive. Remember the verse that says, 'I have blotted out as thick a cloud as your transgressions, and as a cloud your sin. Return to me, for I have brought you back.'" Dottie nodded. "You may have turned your back on God. You may have traveled away from him. That doesn't mean you cease to be his son. Do you remember the night under the baobab tree near the gate of the hospital? You read me words from God's book. As many as received Jesus and invited him into their hearts to them, he gave them power and authority to become children of God, as many of them as believed on his name." Jacobo nodded. "You became a son of God that day. You had no doubt about it?" "I had no doubt then. And now your heart calls for him. When that happens, you can be sure, tremendously sure, that he is still your father and you are still his son. But you ask him to forgive you, and it is your responsibility to make right anything that you have done wrong to others." Jacobo flinched. "Indeed, I have much work to do in this matter." He sighed and looked away again. Urgently from further up the road came the distress signal. A frantic woman was wringing her hands and screaming. "What's happened?" shouted Baruti. "My child! He's fallen into water! He will drown!" Jacobo shouted. Where? Where did he fall in?" She pointed with her chin. Jacobo did not hesitate. He dived into the muddy water. The water settled quietly. It seemed that he must be tangled in weed or snagged in an underwater bush. "Will he never come up again?" exploded Boba. As if in answer, Jacobo came to the surface, shook the water out of his eyes, took a deep breath, and died again. Dr. Matama's eyes were on his watch. 30 seconds. 45. He was about to say 60 when Jacobo appeared, grasping the arm of a completely limp boy. "My son!" screamed the woman. "Give in to me!" Baruti barred her way and said, "Go gently. Dr. Matama can save your child." Gasping, Jacobo laid the child down. "This is the way," said Goba. Face to one side, feet higher than the head. Water drained from the lad's mouth. Dr. Dowdy's hand was over the child's heart. "It's beating, but not very strongly. I'll do mouth-to-mouth treatment for 5 minutes, and you take over Jacobo." He held the child's nose and breathed gently, rhythmically into the boy's chest. People crowded round. The mother shrieked, "He's dead! My child's dead!" He threw herself at Baruti. He'll live, panted Jacobo, if we work with wisdom. The mother rolled her eyes wildly and started the death wail. Other women joined in. Men came running up and started to argue. The wall of legs that surrounded the hospital team shuffled closer. Jacobo touched the doctor on the shoulder. 5 minutes, he muttered, taking over. The temper of the crowd was growing ugly. The woman's voice became frenzied. Time dragged. Jacobo had been resuscitating for some minutes when an old man shouted harshly, "What evil thing are they doing? What witchcraft is this?" The death trap was stirring the crowd into hysteria. "Give me a spear!" shouted a husky voice. Boba urged, "Let me do it for a while." Dowdy Matama nodded, and Jacobo stood up gasping. Baruti held up his hand. "Quiet! This is a new way! The child is dead!" shouted a man moving nervously towards Boba with the knobbed stick. He swung it high, but Jacobo grasped it from behind. The man shouting stopped in his throat as the boy sneezed and started to breathe again. The people stood back thunderstruck, and the mother moaned, not able to believe her eyes. "Mother," Dr. Dowdy beckoned. "Come, wrap a blanket around him. He must be kept warm." For a moment she stood there dazed, then realizing what had happened, she wrenched the blanket from his shoulders, wrapped around the child, and held him close. Baruti's cheerful voice called to the people. "You saw this with your own eyes. You thought he was dead, drowned. You drank the water and breathed into him until he was able to do it for himself." The mother looks up. "You speak words of truth. My child breathes. He lives." Okay, we'll just stop the Jungle Doctor and Slippery Places here for now. But I hope you join us next week for the rest of it. Bye!
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you next time on another story time with Joan. Reading with Joan. Bye.